one of the all-time great scorers, a great offensive player. You could shoot the ball, and just so many people can talk, and it's almost folklore on Tony Upson stories, whether you're battling Frank Williams or Gene Davis or Will Jones or you name it. You've had some shootouts, so to speak. Talk about how you initially got started in basketball and how you developed a deadly shot from various spots on the court.
Well, first, I'd like to thank you for that compliment. It just brings joy to me just to hear you associate me with basketball in that light. But I guess I could say, thinking about my life and my career and certainly my love for the game of basketball, I fell in love with the game at a very early age. I suspect back when I was in junior high school. And middle school and junior high school is when individuals, want to be a part of a group, want to be connected. It's such an important part of an individual's development, and that applies to me. And the group that I gravitated to were the athletes. You could either be an athlete or in a gang. And fortunately, I chose to be with the athletes. And I just love the competition. I love playing. I would say that during my high school and even my college years, I probably played basketball 6 days a week for hours at a time. It was an important part of my life. It was sort of, at that point in my life, it gave my life meaning.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm looking at a story that was in yesterday's Washington Post. I don't know whether you've had a chance to see it or any of our listeners, but I highly recommend it. And the title is DC Swagger. From high school to pros, area has long been rich in hoops talent. And they talk about how early on the 1965 DeMatha team actually put DC basketball on the map with that victory over Lou Alcindor and Powell Memorial. And then they have other list of events. I go back before then when the John Thompson and George Leffridge Carroll team. But take us back, Tony. You're in middle school. Who were some of the people that influenced you that you watched as a youngster and said, wow, I want to be like this guy, or one day I want to be on the court and compete against this guy?
Gosh, which there were just so many, not only local, but, when you look at the professional arena, the Elgin Baylors, guys like that from the city. I remember going to see him play I was at a very young age, and he was at Spingarn. They called him Rabbit at the time, but he was certainly one that I aspired and would hope to be able to play at that kind of level. But you talk about John Thompsons and Willie Jones, Jeannie Littles. I mean, there were so many guys out of D.C. It makes me think that I certainly don't want to leave out some of the greats. But part of that time too, I mentioned to you how I just love to compete. If there was a player who had a reputation of being an exceptional basketball player, no matter where he played, I would try to find a way to that playground or to that basketball court. I traveled by bike, but I traveled all over the city just to compete against those guys, from the John Thompsons to Jerry Chambers, Austin Carr. You talked about George Leffridge, certainly out at Kelly Miller with Dave Bing. Those were exciting times for me. Harold Fox.
Yes.
Fatty Taylor. Oh, and how could I not forget John Sleepy Austin?
Oh, man, yeah.
And up in the Northwest where I grew up, Andrew Agnew and Science Hill, who I played with. Those were the guys that I aspired to be in the company of or in the group of.
Hmm. We're very pleased to have on our World Free ATM hotline Tony Upson. If you are over a certain age and you've been around basketball in this area, you know the name Tony Upson, just a tremendous basketball guy. Right now, we're starting off focusing on the player aspect. And Tony, you average what? In high school and certainly your college years, I can recall looking in the paper and seeing you on a regular basis among the leading scorers in the area. You know, talk about how you developed such a deadly jump shot and you know, just a good nose for the basket.
I appreciate the question. You know, I can't go back and give you statistical figures on terms of what I averaged over the years, but in high school, you know, interestingly enough, and I think this kind of helped to develop my career as a player, coach, and then to transition into a leadership role within the school system as a principal. My first coach chose me to be the point guard on the basketball team. And, you know, the point guard, as a point guard, my role was to make decisions. Most of them were made by the coach, but when you look at how the game, the pace and speed of the game goes, many of the decisions about what our team did had to be made by me. You know, what plays to run, what defenses to put the teams in. When I was aware of what the opposing team was attempting to do or wanted to do, I had to sort of position people in certain places. So it sort of led to my understanding that I had to really know all aspects of the game. It sort of made me become more of a student of the game. And in high school, I wasn't a big scorer. I led the team in assists, and I was blessed with the kind of athletic ability to be able to jump, as they say, and I was either third or fourth in rebounding every year. But I wasn't primarily a scorer. The scorer on my high school team was Clarence Hill. He was a first-team All-Metropolitan player who was fortunate enough to receive a scholarship to the University of Massachusetts. But when I left, when I graduated from high school, I enrolled at DC Teachers College, and Clarence Hill wasn't with me. So that's when I became sort of the shooter and the scorer. I kind of say, oh, you realize you could shoot, you know, when you left Clarence. So I was fortunate enough to be the leading scorer each of my years in college. But how did I get that way? It points to discipline and dedication. I had a paper route, and I'm sure you know about that. Many
Certainly.
of those papers when we were kids.
Tony, hold it right there. Tony, hold it right there. On the other side, more from Tony Upson. We're going to talk about Tony Upson, the player, Tony Upson, the coach, and the educator. Stay with us, folks. We're just getting started. This is In and Out of Sports with Coach Butch McAdams. You can hear us every Sunday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m., heard only on the legendary, the great 1450 AM. We are WOL. Presidents to represent me. I'm out for presidents to represent me. I'm out for presidents to represent me. I'm out for presidents to represent me. In and Out of Sports, heard every Sunday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. on WOL 1450 AM on your radio dial. You can also listen to us on the web at www.woldcnews.com, and you can go to our very nice webpage, and that is inandoutofsports.com, and click on Listen Live. On our World Free ATM hotline, we're very pleased to have a legend in the DMV. He is Tony Upson. And Tony, you were talking about the days at DC Teachers. Now, for some of our younger listeners, great players such as yourself, the scholarship opportunities at the major schools around the country in the 60s and 70s weren't as plentiful as they are today. So that meant local schools, schools like a DC Teachers, like a Howard, like a Morgan had terrific players, and they were very competitive, and it was a good ticket.
I certainly agree with that, and I hate to point to myself, but as a testament to that, I think you're aware that I had an opportunity to play in the Eastern Professional Basketball League.
No question.
Was pretty much the minor league at that time. And coming from DC Teachers playing in that league, I was quite successful as well. You know, I was a Rookie of the Year in that league. I made All-Pro. My career resulted in being named player coach there as well. But I wanted to get back to the point you asked something, and again, I appreciate the respect that you had for my career as a ball player, as a basketball player. But, you know, it took dedication and certainly discipline and a commitment to improve that craft. You know, often kids and others look at athletes and think that, you know, it's like a God-given talent. And in many ways, there is some gifts they're given by God, but the perfection of those gifts and the dedication and hard work that it takes to get to what I would call functioning at a high level is certainly required. I spent many, 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 many hours perfecting my game. Before the break, I mentioned that I served papers. Many mornings before I went to school, certainly on the weekends after I served papers, I would go to the court and spend, you know, a considerable amount of time just working on my shot, you know, shooting shots and dribbling and working on new moves. There were times when I would shovel snow off of the court, certainly on the weekends, so that I could go out and spend in that time. So it takes a tremendous amount of dedication, commitment, and hard work, not only to get to that level, whatever that level is.
And Tony, let me add something to this. As you mentioned earlier, you talked about the various playgrounds. If you mentioned Kelly Miller, you knew that at the time you would have to face Dave Bing or a Monk Wilkins or a Bernard Levi in northeast of Kelly Miller. Now, correct me, but the playground that people say, hey, I got to go to because I want to play against Tony Upson, your playground was Upshur Playground, correct?
Yes, it was. And many people called me Upshur. They thought it was my
instead of Upson, Tony Upshur.
Well, that's true. I tried to associate that playground with my game and my name. There's a lot of good games there, a lot of competition.
Tony, you talked about the transition in terms from player to coach was easy for you because of your point guard status and being a coach on the floor in so many game situations. But on the other side, was it frustrating because maybe you encountered some players who didn't have the dedication, the focus, or the work ethic as you had?
Well, you know, I can't say that I did. There was some disappointment, but you know, I also recognize the fact that everybody didn't and doesn't love the game to the degree that I did. I had to accept that at some point, even when I was coaching in the Eastern League, coaching at the college level, the junior high school level. You know, people's interest and love for something shows up in their work ethic, and I recognize that rather early too, because I would try to motivate and inspire players to do certain things and to devote and dedicate certain times in their life to perfecting it, and when they didn't, you can't get them there unless they really want to get to that point.
And as you mentioned, you coached at the semi-pro level. You coached at DC Teachers. You had very successful teams, championship teams at the various levels. Talk about one or two or three players that you really enjoyed coaching and were special players.
At DC Teachers, I enjoyed coaching Barry Jefferson.
Oh, man. You talk about a guy that could shoot the ball. Now I bet at that point you were playing, and, of course, Barry was a player. I can imagine you guys playing one-on-one after practice or horse or whatever around the world, and I would have paid to see that one.
But I never did that because I wanted to keep that line there between player and coach. We had a relationship, but I will tell you, I ensured that my players understood and recognized that I was the coach and not just their friend or their buddy, because there were times when you had to be coach and not the peer or the friend. So I was very careful not to get into any skill competitions with my players, whether it be junior high school, college, or at the pro level. But I will tell you the highlight of my coaching at the pro level was when I was coaching in Connecticut, in Hamden, Connecticut, and we had Philadelphia's first-round pick. They sent him to my team and their fourth, and we played an exhibition game with the Philadelphia 76ers, preseason game. So the highlight of my coaching career was coaching not only at the pro level, but against an NBA team. Now, we didn't win, so I would love to say to you that we beat them, but that was the highlight of my career, coaching against Billy Cunningham's team.
On our World Free ATM hotline, we're very honored to have Tony Upson aboard. And Tony, you, the final chapter from player to coach, educator. I can remember Eugene Davis, who a good friend of mine who will be a guest on the show next week. And Gene Davis told me that your friend Frank Williams, when he first stepped on Howard's campus, pulled him aside as well as the freshmen and said, look, there are three things that are important to you, and if you follow them in this order, you'll be okay. Books, basketball, and girls, in that order. And I mention that because back then, in most cases, while you love basketball, you and most of the others understood that the education component was so important.
Yeah. Well, let me put it to you in another way, and I will get to that. But as I matured in this world and in this life, I believe others often question themselves and say, well, why am I really here? What's my purpose in life? And my philosophy towards that, is that for your life to matter. I believe that each of us is put on this earth for our life to matter. I believe that when you talk about those purposes, that they are in this order: to live, to love, to learn, and to leave a legacy. And to leave a legacy is as we all know, what do you want to be remembered by? What is it that you want people to say about you at the end of the day? And that's where this movement into the principalship and the importance of education, there is, in my view, no greater legacy that one can leave that's valued more and worth more than to help people to have a better life.
Tony, hold it right there. On the other side, if you could give us a couple more minutes, I want to go a little deeper into the educational component. And finally, certainly I want you to leave our listeners, especially our younger listeners, some words of wisdom, some pearls. Stay with us. More to come. Tony Upson is on our World Free ATM hotline. This is In and Out of Sports with Coach Butch McAdams on 1450 WOL.
News updates on the web at WOLDCnews.com.
What's that on that beat?
In and Out of Sports, heard every Sunday morning, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. on the legendary, the great 1450 a.m. We are WOL. Let's go back to our World Free ATM hotline, and we're honored to have Mr. Tony Upson aboard. And Tony, we've talked about your accomplishments as a player, as a coach, but at what point did you decide not to chase the dream, so to speak, and maybe become an NBA player or NBA coach, and decided to use your education and you yourself become an educator?
Well, I was inspired and encouraged by my principal, and interestingly enough, my first job was working at Rabeau Junior High School, and the principal of the school at that time was a highly respected principal in the city by the name of Graves, Dr. Lawrence A. Graves.
Mm-hmm.
And he was also my principal when I was a student at McFarland Junior High School. And upon graduation, he recruited me to become a part of his staff. And after about 4 years as the teacher there, special ed, science, and physical education were the subjects that I taught, he called me into his office one day and said that he saw some leadership potential in me as it relates to education, and encouraged me to go back to school. I just possessed a bachelor's degree at that time, to get a master's to pursue, because he was, my mentor, I did go back to school, earn a master's degree, and he encouraged me to pursue the role of principal, whereby I carried on the same kinds of duties,
Mm-hmm.
mentoring and inspiring teachers to be the very best that they could be for our students on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm. Also, Tony, besides being a principal at the various levels in schools, you also was a leader and did some workshops with other principals throughout the area and throughout the country. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I became a successful administrator too. I just believe that there's something about me. If I take on a role or a job, I really put my all into it. I really commit to it and do the things that one needs to do in order to be successful in those roles, whether it be, basketball player, teacher, coach, principal. So I continued to study and to attend leadership seminars, improving my craft and my knowledge base. And one year I enrolled in the Principal Center at Harvard. They have a summer institute at the School of Education at Harvard University, and I enrolled as a participant, again, building my craft knowledge and skills.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of that session, I was called into the director's office and invited to become a part of the faculty there. It was something that I did, and the manner in which I was a student and a participant, they saw some skills and knowledge of the principalship or the art of leadership in me and asked me to become a part of the staff. And I accepted and served on the staff of the Principal Center there in their summer institute for 15 years.
Wow.
Which also blossomed into a role for me as the director of the Principal Center here in Washington, D.C. So my job as executive director of the D.C. Public Schools Principal Center was to create growth opportunities and professional development experiences for the principal.
Tony, in closing, leave our listeners, especially our younger listeners, with some words of wisdom, please, and in terms of motivation and seeking and being committed to the goals?
I would say that, particularly for our youth out there, youth want opportunities, to be recognized, to attend various functions, to be included, and they look at our athletes, and they see athletes get an opportunity to go here, to go there, to do this, to do that. They look at the celebrities, whether it be movies, acting, careers, rap artists, singers, dancers, and they see opportunities for them to be exposed and to be invited and to be a part of various events. But I would say to them, being educated, being well educated, expands one's opportunities to be included and to be successful in life more than anything else. Because at the end of the day, that athlete, that star, that celebrity, at some point, their careers and professions will lose their luster at some point. And then they have to fall back on their education, what it is that they know, what they can do. We are all what we eat, drink, and think. And if one cannot think, and cannot comprehend and understand and express him or herself adequately and articulately, life will be a challenge. Life will continue to be a challenge at some point. So, what I say, education today is the new currency. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I would encourage them to really understand and recognize the value of being educated.
Tony, thank you so much, man. I've always had the utmost respect for you in so many different categories, and it's been an honor and certainly a treat to have you on this show. Thanks a lot, man.
In closing, I say this is what I would consider this mutual admiration. I've been a fan of yours for years. I remember your programming on WOL nightly, even times when you had Kenny Brown there.
Oh, yeah.
And I believe you transferred over to Baltimore. Were you working with Les Brown?
No. I do the morning show in Baltimore with Larry Young, former state senator Larry Young.
I've been a fan of yours for years, and I still continue to listen. And I commend you on your career and how you are recognized as one of the true talk show radio hosts in this metropolitan area. You're highly respected, and I commend you, and I appreciate the opportunity to be a part of this with you.
Thank you, Tony. That means a lot. Thank you. And folks, thank you. And folks, that was Tony Upson.